This video explains how we originate shop drawings of door and glass. We use mostly 5 programs: Google Chrome with Bid Unity. We generate a significant amount of the submittal content using Bid Unity. We organize the content within Layout, which is an accessory CAD program. It works well with Sketchup. It's intended to work together with Sketchup. Sketchup is the program that we draw everything in. Layout's not really great at drawing. Layout is intended to help us organize different media relative to each other and gives us a little bit of drawing functionality, but the real heart of the drawing takes place in Sketchup. We use Microsoft Paint primarily to edit and format screenshots taken from Bid Unity and also from Excel. We use Excel to convert proposal data into schedules for the benefit of the shop drawings. We'll look at the specific uses and how those programs work in another video. In this video, I want to dive into the way that shop drawings are organized and explain the intent behind creating them and including information within them. Our shop drawings are intended for every audience. That means the customer, D&G, our employees, all the way from administration to performance in the field. We want a single document that explains the entire process and information, what it's supposed to be. It all needs to be included in this single document. This is very important because in the course of a project being performed, the project manager can't be relied upon to make up drawings to show special conditions and explain how we need to install something. It needs to be clarified on the front end so that everybody is on the same page with respect to what it is that Door and Glass is going to do. High-level overview of the shop drawing set. This one included 22 pages. We have a couple of main sections, call it 6 main sections. The general information, specifications for our work, floor plans, frame elevations, cross sections and details. Finally, we have administration. So I'm going to show you how the process normally goes. You're going to open Layout. When you open Layout, you have a sort of landing page window. Could have, different paper sizes. They have a storyboard. They have title blocks. And, really it's important to realize what Layout is. It's basically a software that allows you to create pages and build up documents that can contain, a series of pages, but within each page you could say, you could specify the dimensions of the page, and then you can import different types of media files and place them, layer them on top of each other, overlap them, mask them, but you're able to manipulate different types of data and files within the context of a two-dimensional viewport. That's really all Layout does. It allows us to make documents out of files and pictures and various different types of media, bringing those media together in the same program so that we can display this combination of media in a way that's meaningful. When you very first set up Layout on your computer, you're going to go to Edit and Preferences, and then you're going to go to Folders. This is where you identify the locations of special folders. Okay, we have folders for templates, the first two of these are part of the layout program, right? In the space on the hard drive where the program is stored, layout expects to be able to store template files there. We're including this additional file folder directory for layout templates, and this is where at the company the templates that we've created at the company are being saved. They're being saved in this directory, which is a shared directory. So you want to include this file folder directory in your layout templates. That way you have access to all of the company's layout templates. And the same thing is true with scrapbooks. Scrapbooks are layout documents just exactly the same like templates, but the use case is different. Instead of having a template for a whole new document, the scrapbook allows us to make pages or even just elements within pages of reusable content. So in a scrapbook, we could have a collection of relevant, window details. And maybe we drag the detail into the file that we're working on, basically copying it from a file that we worked on previously. Not the whole file, just the little element of the file. So now that I have my templates directory set up, I'm navigating there. I'm looking at the versioning. I want to select the most currently dated template. Once I select that, it loads. In the document setup window that pops up, I see I have some media files that are out of date. That means those files were changed after the template file was saved. So the template file, maybe it was saved on a Monday, and then those media files that are referenced within the template file, maybe they were changed on Tuesday, and now it's Wednesday. We open them up, and when you open layout, it checks to see, check the references when loading this document. So that's checked, and it sees that they have changed since the file was saved. We could update them. We don't have to. Whatever, whatever is included in the document is still here. Now, I'm going to go File, Save. I want to save this. I just opened a template. I need to save it. I'm going to go to the project folder. I'm going to 04 project submission directory. And then I'm going to save this as project name, glazing, submittal. That's the name of it. Now, if I have to revise this for any reason, then I'm going to save it as project name, glazing submittal, R number 1, R number 2. I'm going to create a copy basically of the original one, and then I'm going to save it as R1. I'm not going to change the original one based on whatever they tell me to change. You have to create versions in these layout documents. And you have to do that because you'd be surprised how many times you initially suggest we do it this way. They make comments and changes, you revise it, and then they want you to change it back to what you had before. Happens a lot. The concern that, or the thing to be aware of, when you create a copy or save this as, R1, the file, both files, the original and now the new, both of those files have all of the same media references internally. Because the layout files are referencing media files, if the media files change, then you could propagate those changes into the layout document when you open it and update the links to media files. Perhaps a best practice is to save the layout document inside of its own folder within this 04 product submission directory. We have our folder for version 1 of the submittals, and then if revisions are necessary, we copy that whole folder, which would include the layout file as well as any SketchUp or other media files. We copy the entire directory and all of its contents, and then paste it right there adjacent. Change the name of that folder to R1. If layout is saving the path to media files in a relative format, then that would work out just fine. That would be perfect versioning. Okay, so now that we opened layout, we saved a template file, we are ready to start working on shop drawings. So on the right hand side here we have a navigation within the document. It's a list of all the page numbers. So these are all the page numbers that were included with the template file that was saved. We'll just go through kind of section by section and review how the document gets put together. So on the cover sheet, we're changing a couple of things. But the way that we're changing this stuff is by using Autotext. So when you go to Text, Customize Autotext, within Layout, we have the ability to create variables, right? So I'll just click Add a new tag. They're calling them tags. Okay, so the page count tag, that's a fairly common one. We can pick a starting page and an ending page, and so the cover sheet to the last page, the number of pages counted, it's 22. So that's what the variable, the value is. It's 22. Pretty simple. I could pick a different page if I want to, now it's 19. Okay, I'm just going to delete that. But what I have labeled for our Autotext within, again, this template file, project address, project name, architectural drawings, this is the date that they were drafted. The structural drawings, that's the date that they're drafted. We have a couple of variables that relate to the table of contents. We have a frame finish variable. And then we have some variables that are associated with, you see the different pages here, A, B, C, D. This is a page count. It ends on page A. Okay, so that's handy. I'll show you where that's handy. Anyway, so on the cover sheet, we're updating these Autotext variables, and we get this content updated. Our comments and symbols page, this is general information from one shop drawing version to the next. It's going to be unchanged. We have a section for special notes. That is, there needs to be a place in the context of the shop drawings for us to recognize and communicate when stuff is different in a way that we really can't convey the significance or importance of it within the context of our drawing. So special notes are pieces of information that need to be conveyed that really you can't convey otherwise. We have a section for exclusions. Every now and then it seems prudent to just make mention that we're not going to do X, Y, Z, whatever it might be, excluded from our scope of work, such as demolition. And then we have a section for a revision narrative. So if we are ever asked to revise and resubmit or revise the drawings for whatever reason, it's a good practice to make a note of what is the reason for the revision. You'll notice in the title block we have an issue date. That's going to be an Autotext type of a variable called current date. So that's going to print what it prints. And then we have a reissue date. So we could, go in our Autotext and we could update the reissue date. The issue date, that is the original issue date, never changes. If it's reissued subsequently, then you just put, additional dates. Every time you have a revision, you'll add a new date. So you could end up with, 3 or 4 different revision dates. We have a page for general information. Occasionally I've been highlighting the finish color. I don't think that's necessary. We're specifying what it is on the next page. This information is just general, manufacturer warranty, what's typical, lead times, typical, really not changed. Next we have the specifications page. This page is intended to bring together information about all of the different products that Door and Glass is furnishing on the project. We have sort of a concise tabular summary for each of the different types of products. You can see what information is included within that tabular summary. We're including the U factor and solar heat gain for product systems which are incorporated in the building envelope. We're including their product approval numbers and their finishes. We have a section here to record a citation or reference to where did we find this information specified. Sometimes I put in that box I couldn't find the information, and so I just assumed the finish that I assumed. So here on the specifications page we have a table for the wind pressures. We're just transcribing what's on the plan documents, whether we find this table in the structural drawings or architecturals. We want to transcribe the pressure values that they're giving to us. They may give us the pressure values in ultimate pressure or as nominal pressure. If you want to convert the one to the other, it's a factorable thing. If they don't give us the pressures for 10, 20, 50, 100, a lot of times I'll delete those rows. If they don't give us any pressures, I'll merge all of these cells together and make a note, no pressures provided. This box at the bottom gives us the ability to reference where we found the pressures. I am including the architectural sheet number and the date that it was drafted. I've also included two different tables dealing with the energy compliance. This first table is appropriate to be used when the prescriptive pathway controls. The second table is appropriate to be used when the performance-based pathway is elected. That's when we're provided with energy input data report values for the glazing systems. It's a mutually exclusive compliance criteria. Whichever one is the one that is appropriate for the project, that's the table that we're going to leave, and we'll delete the other table. Now, if it's a performance-based compliance pathway, then we're going to modify the contents of the table accordingly to show what performance is required. Finally, we get to the door schedule. And the way that we're going to do this, we're going to go in the project, we're going to go to the proposal, which represents the reconciled scope of work. We're going to go to the public-facing proposal, in particular the product submission data section. We're going to click on the door schedule, and then we're going to do Windows, Shift, Windows S. And then we'll click on the screen. That's going to allow us to get a screenshot. And then we will select the door schedule item. Okay, now I'm going to push Control X. That cuts it out of there. And then I'm just going to click in here and I'm going to press Control V. Okay, now I pasted it in. I could resize it if I wanted, and I'm looking in the bottom. It says scale 1.369, comma 1.806, 1.369, 2.45415. So 1.369 is about as large as I could make it if I want to, and I don't want it to be all distorted, so I'm just going to put 1.3. Okay, 1.4. Yeah, that's too big. 1.36. Okay, and then maybe what I'll do is try to center it. So I can click on this, and I can use up and down arrows to position it so that my margins are even. And I don't want to cover up other media, right? That just takes up extra memory. I don't need to make it this big. I could just straight away Control V and then go ahead and position it. If it looks like too small or not legible, I'm going to press Shift Z. That zooms the window to, fill up your screen. But if it looks funny or not legible, I could drag it and make it bigger. And the way you do that is by typing in the scale values, 1.25. If you type in 1.25, comma 1.25, that's fine. If you only provide one value, it will scale it evenly. Projects often include multiple doors. In this case, I like to minimize the screen somewhat. I'm going to Control Windows S, Shift Windows S rather. I'll paste this into Paint, and then I'm going to take this portion to 100A. Come back in here and try and capture from 100A on down. Paste this again. Section from 100A, so I can get to 106. Shift Windows S. Let's zoom to the extent of what is on the page, and then I'll resize it. Okay, looks like 0.785 is the smaller the dimension, so I'm going to just choose 0.75. That should scale it evenly. I hit Shift Z to zoom on the page. It's all there. That's one way to do it. Looks like this first element is somewhat discolored. Maybe I hovered the mouse over it when I did the initial screen capture. So if I Shift Windows S again and then copy this, let's go back to Paint. I'm going to make this quite large so that when I paste this, I can do it off to the side. I'll just bring this one element. Actually, what I'll do is copy this portion right there. Ooh, I better watch this white space on the right. Okay. Control C. Now, I have that on the clipboard. I'm going to press Control Z, Control Z, Control Z. Now I'm back to the original thing. I'm going to paste what I just copied. How's the color that I want? Control Z. Now that I'm nice and zoomed in, there we go. Okay, now I'm going to save this. I'm going to go back to Layout, click on the image, right click, and update image reference. So it's pulling in the new file, or the updated file. So that's one way to include a large number of doors. Now let's say there's twice as many doors as this. Maybe we have a second page for the door schedule. What's not shown in the shop drawings we have on this project that this door schedule is from, there are two different buildings, and then there are also electric panic devices. See, this is the AHT 8000 CBR ELEO. So that's an electric panic. This is an electric panic. In total, we have 3 different doors powered with electric panic devices on this job. 2 of those doors are very close together and they're going to share the same power supply. So where do you put in the drawings that information? I'll show you how this project with these door schedules ultimately got put together. The doors belonging to the K8 building were put in this section, and we drew a blue box around them. And the doors associated with the ELC building, we have this green box around them, and we use this yellow highlighted field with the notes about the shared power supply and the standalone power supply. What's important here is not just copying and pasting, but conveying the information about what material is ordered, how we expect the job to be done, how should that material be disposed of. In the case of XC100 and C100A, those doors are sharing this power supply. It's important that we convey all of the information to the parties that are going to be performing the work. Now we get to the glass schedule. Normally we're going to have a sense of what kind of glass we need to use on the project based on the energy values, what's required. We go to D&G glass. This has a bunch of different performance, center of glass, solar heat gain values for various different types of glass that we commonly use. Of course, in this little side panel, you can't read them at all. I like to click Edit, and what that does, when you click Edit, it loads this scrapbook layout file into layout, so you're looking at basically a live layout document. You can come in here, zoom, and really figure out what is it that you're getting. Now when I click on this, you see how many different things highlight, right? That is because all of these things are grouped together. So you can double click to go inside of the group, and then you can individually select things from within the group. So I could press Control C to copy it. Now if I go back to my layout document and I press Control V, then I'm going to get that one item that I selected. I could drop it right in, however I want. Notice I have to come in here, it's tough. You want it to snap to where it goes, or lines up. So I just snapped it, right? Now, you can take this, click, hold, drag, let's see, 0, comma, I'm going to type 0, comma, 2.5. Okay, so that moved to 2.5 inches. I'm going to select this one, delete it. I'm going to take this one, 0, comma, minus 2.5. Okay, now I've covered up the glass tag. I'm going to right click, arrange, send to back. And there it is. So these different things, they can have relative positions, like which one shows up, overwrites, or is on top of the other one. Another important thing, if that's not working quite right for you, it's important to realize the precedence of layers. You can have different layers in the document, and if you, the higher up in this list the layer is, that gives precedence to that media writing over lower layers. So if I have content in revision 1 and I put content in revision 2 directly on top of it, you'll not see revision 1. And you can arrange it all you want, this send forwards and backwards. That only pertains to content within a single layer. Okay, so if all of the content in the default layer, you can arrange it all relative to each other. But if you have content in revision 1, which is higher than the default layer, then the content in revision 1, you can send it to the back. It's still going to be on top of the default layer. Hopefully that makes sense. In the glass schedule, in this section, I have included a reference to where the information about the glass was found. Same like what we're doing with the finishes. Notice also I have a layer here, hidden information. Okay, the eyeball associated with this layer, it's clicked or not clicked. Then dictates whether this information is visible. So this is all grouped up together. If you right click, you could say move to layer. This is on the hidden information layer. Now if I don't want it to show up here, then I just hide it. I click the eyeball and it is now hidden. So I guess when we save this as a template, we will make that show up so that we don't forget that we have it here. We have a page for opening schedule. The customers like to call us all the time for, you know, customers frequently we have a page here for the openings, so a schedule of openings. We added this page to our submittal drawings because customers were frequently requesting, can you send me a list of opening sizes? And so we want to just on the front end include that list so that they don't have to ask. And the way that we do this is taking the proposal. I like to kind of make the window more narrow. I drag it just wide enough so that opening and size, those words appear side by side, not stacked on top of each other. And then I'll shift Windows S, get a screenshot of it. I'll take it into Paint, and then I'll copy out sections. When the thing is large, I'll end up stacking different ones on top of each other, and I'll eventually crop it, save it, and then I'll come into File, Insert, and go, where is my opening schedule? So then I'll have an opening schedule document open, and it brings in the image file that I just saved. I may resize it. I want to preserve the scale, so I'm going to hit 0.75. I want to make sure that it's all legible. It is. And if I have interior openings, exterior openings, you can see how that's organized. If I don't have any interior openings, I might just click on that and delete it, and then drag this thing, full width. Next, we include floor plans. For the floor plan, we go to the architectural drawings. This is the dimension floor plan. I'm usually looking for something that's not so busy. You know, basically you want to show the profile of the building's floor plan. You could include the parking lot and, you know, sort of the site plan, but what you need is something that's large enough that you can place these elevation marker symbols on the floor plan in a way that, you know, shows where the work is located. So I try to find a nice, clean, not too busy floor plan, and then I'll Shift Windows S, do the screen capture. I'll open up Paint, paste my screen capture, and then I'll select the portion of it that I want to keep, drop that, and then File, Save As. I'm going to add it into the folder as floor plan, you know, 1 for the first floor, 2, 3. I'll go ahead and save that. And then I'll repeat this for other floors or areas of the building. We're going to repeat the same process. Then I'll come into Layout, File, Insert. Then I'll select the file I want to put it in, click Open. That brings in the image. I'm going to resize it. It's 1.3. Right click, center, horizontal. How about we center vertical too? Let's see, center, vertical. Alright, I'll move it a little bit, kind of center it in the white space. Now, on this project, we have a couple of elevations to mark. So I'm going to go in the scrapbooks. I'm looking for D&G drawing symbols. And the first page of that file is symbols. I like to use the red marker. So I click on that, bring it over, click again to release it, and then hit spacebar to deselect it, double clicking. This 59 right here, it's an Autotext variable. It's the elevation ID variable, and it is on the default layer. I want to move it to elevation labels layer. If I go to my layers, it is hidden. Elevation labels is hidden. Now, we have had an issue with projects where you have 20 of elevation type A. You might want to identify each of those openings uniquely. So this Autotext variable, elevation ID, it allows us to uniquely identify each elevation or each of these markers that are placed. Now, this symbol that we just drug in, it's a group of different things, right? So if I click on it, you see all of this blue outline stuff. It indicates there's a whole bunch of different stuff in here. Now, primarily this consists of this circular symbol, and then we have a text box with a horizontal line element. Okay, this is the text box, right? And all this is the number 1, and then enter, so a new line, and then page number is the Autotext value, and that's giving us 8 because we're on the 8th page. I'm going to hit Shift Z to recenter, and then I'm going to hit Control Z to undo what I just did in moving this thing around. So what we need to do here is we need to rotate this thing around. So this is a center point and then a handle, you can rotate the thing. So it's going to rotate when you grab this handle portion. When you click on the handle and hold it down, it's going to rotate about that center point. And so what we want to do is we want to bring this in and then rotate it, but we don't want our numbers to rotate. We just want the pointer to rotate. So I double click inside of this grouping, and then I'm clicking on not the text box with the horizontal line. I want those to remain vertically oriented. Let's see if I can get this thing. Yeah, that's as close as I can get it to the center. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. If it doesn't go exactly to 90 degrees, then I can type in 90. And then I use the up arrow to recenter the symbol portion. So I'm able to rotate this thing around and get it pointing in the direction I want. So on this first floor, I'm going to have something here, and then I'm going to have another one. There's another storefront here. So I double click in the group, I click on the part of the geometry I want to rotate, and move that symbol closer to the center, and then I'll use the left arrow to put this closer to where I want. Perfect. Okay, so I have two elevations in these locations. I like to put the markers on the floor plan so that the locations of elevations are identified, but I don't necessarily know at this point what page numbers are going to correspond with the elevations that I haven't added yet to the shop drawings. If I'm just following this process and going step by step as we are in this video, we place the floor plans, but we haven't placed any elevation drawings yet. So I like to put the markers in and then come back later and point them to the correct pages which the elevations appear on. Now moving on, if we have like a second floor, you know, it's the same process for including the third floor. If we only had two floors, then we just hit the minus button and that will delete page. We have, you know, second floor on page 9, third floor it was page 10. We deleted it. Now, you know, all of the subsequent elevation page numbers, everything is different now because I deleted page 10. What you want to do, I think, as a best practice is put all the content in before you start, you know, trying to identify which page number is the appropriate page number to put in these symbols. We'll move on and put in the elevation drawings. Our template file includes a couple of elevation pages. It's typical for a template file to include, you know, the basic structure, and it doesn't take much to delete what's already on the page. The reason for including this page where it shows these elevations stacked on top of each other, this preserves some information about the alignment of openings relative to each other, which I think, you know, for this project we want the vertical mullion elements to align. That's not something which is just going to happen. The standard practice for installation is to install a frame relative to the opening. So you want to put a single frame in an opening, get the, you know, frame centered left to right, top to bottom. You have the different, you know, standard shim space deductions. That's what we train our installers to do. When we have openings stacked vertically on top of each other and we want the mullions from the, you know, first, second, third floor to be aligned with one another, you can't just put the frame in the opening and center it. You would want to look at, you know, relative to what's above, what's below, where's everything going, how's it going to align. So for that reason, I included a page in this drawing set where we're showing these elevations, you know, relative to one another. Most of the time, most projects, we're looking at putting openings, you know, frames in openings where we expect that the openings are constructed such that the placement of the frame, as dictated by the opening, aligns with every other opening as our customer intends. So the majority of the time, what we're going to be doing is just putting in, you know, single frame openings on a page. So I'm just going to delete this to start, and then I'll go to the proposal, I'll right click, copy image, then I'm going to come back to layout, right click, paste, and then I'll resize this. Let's see, I'm just going to go 2.5. Now you can see it's a little bit, you know, the numbers here, it's a little fuzzy. I mean, for sure it's legible, but it's a little fuzzy. Another thing we can do, you can view this as a full page, and then maybe if I copy this image, bring it to Paint, paste it in, and then here I'll crop this, and we'll see Control X. If I paste this, okay, it's already much bigger, you know, to begin with. And if I bring it up, it looks like I only need to go, let's say 1.2. Side by side, you know, I have a lot more pixels in the second one. So this isn't something that you're necessarily going to need to do for smaller frames, but you want to have, you know, you don't want to have fuzzy, you know, blurry pictures in the shop drawings. You want everything, I mean, it doesn't have to be crystal clear, but it definitely, you want it to be easily legible. So I'll just delete this one, and then, I mean, the process here, it's going to be similar for all of this stuff. I'll do this small one, copy image. I like to just copy and paste it if I can. If it isn't going to come out blurry, let's see, I'll just scale this by 2, and that might be a little big. And you know what? This seems to be quite a bit higher than it needs to be. Yeah, and that might be a little bit large too. I'm going to come back and put some section markers on it, but I can adjust it at that time. But suppose I want to add a new page. Let me click on this. I'm going to right click, copy. Now add a new page. Okay, we'll call this B2. And I'm going to Control V, paste this. Now I want to explain a little bit about this. It's a group of different things. In here I have a text box. The text box has the Autotext variable page name, and then a new line, enter page number. So if I copy and paste this thing on different pages, all I have to do is change the page name. That's kind of nice. And then here I have the page name again, dash, the number thus. So I'll just type in 1 thus. I want to show you an example from a project we did some time ago. These frames are quite large, so I'm going to go ahead and copy this, bring it into Paint, paste, and then let me try and crop this. Control C, and then I'll just paste it this way. Okay, so even if I scale this thing, let's say 1.8, yeah, so I'm gonna, let's see, scale this thing back to, yeah, 1.5, no, 0.9. Okay, so we're just not going to be able to get legible values because of the proportions of this frame and the number of columns. So for sure this one, we're going to want to draw this in SketchUp and then dimension it. So the first thing I want to do is pull up the elevation. This gives me the best opportunity to see the dimensions and everything that we have here. So what I have is 70.0313 on the daylight, 131-inch opening. Alright, I'm going to go in SketchUp, and then I'm going to go to the D&G Sketchup Components. I'm going to scroll down to Windows and Doors, and this contains some components that are windows and doors. In here we have a dynamic component that's a single panel. I'm going to place that and then right click. You see the green little icon? That indicates it's a dynamic component. So I'm going to go to Component Options. The type of frame on this project, the face dimension is, we have a 1.25 inch face dimension. The first horizontal height is 60.1875. The second horizontal height is 96. And then we have a head at 132. And we're going to have to cheat this a little bit because we have a curve. So the length of this is 107 1/4. I have a 1/4 inch bottom shim space and 3/8 top shim space. And the shim spaces I have here are 3/8 top and bottom. So I'm going to update my shim spaces. My receptor, I have no receptor. And my opening height, I'm going to use this plus 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to put this opening height as 108. And then I'll get my daylight height from here, 70.0313. Okay, now once I apply this, yeah, that's not quite what we wanted. Okay, so this is set at 24 inches. Alright, so what I need to do, dynamic component options, I need to reduce this by 24 inches. So that's going to give me 36.188. 96 minus 24 inches is going to give me 72 inches. It looks more like it. Now I have 3 of these, and then let's see what I'm going to do. Click, and then I'm going to type X2. That copies 2 panels. I'm going to come in here, press Control, I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to right click on this, and I want to make this unique. I'm going to go back to my dynamic component options. I'm going to change the daylight in this to 36. Then I have a door frame. So let's see if we have, here's a door frame. We'll go ahead and stick this in here. This doesn't have the green boxes, it's not a dynamic component. But I guess what we want to see is the total opening height is 132. So move this over. And my door height is 96, 72 by 96. I'm going to right click and explode this. I don't need any of those side lights, and I don't need any of those side lights. Okay, I want this whole thing, for my door jambs to be holding down shift. I want this to be on the ground. Now, if I click on the bottom of the jam, I can see the length is 2.5. I want to get to 1.25 inches, so I'm going to move that to 1.25, and what remains, it should be 1.25. Now, I'm going to do the same thing over here. 1.25. Okay. And then my overall height is 132. 132. And I have a 3/8 inch shim space at the top, so 0.375. So that is going to be the top of the frame. And then this looks to be 2.5. It is. I'm going to move this up 1.25. And my doors, I need to make these doors 96. Okay. So I'm going to move this up. It should be 12 inches. And that corresponds pretty nicely with the top of the door opening. So I'm going to highlight all of this, right click, I'm going to make it a group, and then I'll move this group. Let's get these things positioned nicely. Okay, now zoom out, and I can bring this up, holding down shift. Okay, now we'll bring back this. We have 36. It looks like we're at this 70.003. So basically it's the small panel, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 big panels. Over here I have the small and 3. I'm going to take this group, bring it over here. I'm going to use my flip tool, and then I'm going to bring this to correspond with the door frame. That lines up. And then this one, need to make 2 more panels. So I'm going to get it to line up there, and then I'm going to hit X2. So that should be the extra 2 panels. Yeah. Now I'm going to go ahead and File, Save As, and navigate to the project folder and the one that I'm working on. I'm going to call this large elevation. Save that. Okay, I need to make this also 1 1/4. I think that does it. File, save. Let's create a viewport. Scenes. I'm going to select all of this that I want to include in my view. Right click and then select zoom selection. I'm going to scenes. I'm adding scene 1. I'm going to call this large elevation. Press enter. Now finally I'll save this and I'm going to close out of SketchUp here. File, insert, choose the file we just created the drawing in. Here we go to my SketchUp model. There's a 1 to 50 scale. We'll try it 1 to 64 scale. We'll resize this so that the SketchUp viewport's not huge. It's kind of centered in the white space. Now, if I zoom in on this, it doesn't really render that nicely. I want to make this line much smaller. And we can do this with the raster, but let's just select hybrid and see. It really cleans it up a lot. Now, in order to dimension this, we're going to use the dimension tool. The dimension tool has a couple of options. So we could have it display a level of precision, we could format it as fractions, and then we can control kind of where the dimension displays relative to the markings, and also if the numbers are horizontal or vertical. We'll make whatever settings we want. Okay, we'll select the tool, we'll make the settings, and then those settings will apply to all of the dimensions that we place until we subsequently change them. You got to be careful about the points that you select. Once you have a dimension, you can reference, to the same other dimension to get the height, everything lining up so that it looks nice. If you get the dimension on the wrong thing, then you can go back to the tool, click the tool again, be a little more careful this time. Sometimes you have to really zoom in to get it precisely where you want. In that case, the length displays there at the bottom. And the dimension we want to show, it's the door opening height. Okay, now we could include dimensions for days on this thing. What we want to do is reference the dimensions we have in bid unity. That's showing us the dimensions that are generally important on the left side, I should say. So we have our daylight sizes, our fixed frame size, and our door frame size. So let's include, and then our fixed frame size. We have plenty of space on this page. We can drag this over. Sometimes we don't have all the space that we want to have, so we could change the dimensions, write them vertically. While we're looking at this in the dimension tool, we may want to change the way that it displays. So the way you could do that, you double click on the dimension grouping. You can grab the number value and move it, so you're not constrained to where that appears. The other thing we can do is select these lines. Okay, we have a dot. this is where the dimension, the thing that we're measuring from, and then the secondary dot is how long this dimension leg is going to draw. So let's say we want all of our dimensions to line up with a certain thing. We can control that. We can make it, look pretty nice. But that's the gist of including dimensioning from a Sketchup file. Well, I'll go through the proposal and basically include all of the elevations. Okay, so we have some brake metal. The way that we draw this in BidUnity, that's not helpful for anybody to include this stuff in the shop drawings. But once I get all of my elevations in here, then the cross-sectional details are going to follow after the elevations. So now that I have I'm just going to go ahead and delete this. Now that I have my elevations for this project in the drawings, I can go back to my floor plans and I can start referencing those page numbers. Now, a good practice is to use Autotext variables. And so if I go to Text, Customize Autotext, what I did in the making of this particular template file is I have Autotext variables. I prefixed or named them all elevation ABCD. I've noticed that you would want to create Autotext variables in a sort of a structured way. Those Autotext variables which are intended to reference elevation pages, I like to name them elevation and then the elevation name. I also like to use short elevation names. ABCD doesn't get any shorter than a single letter. But I find that's a helpful way for me to, look at this in the future and know what it is. So, anyway, elevation A, if I click on this, the start page is the cover sheet, the end page is elevation A. And now the value of it is 12. And elevation A is on the 12th page. So if I take the elevation A and I move it, now it's 13. Okay, the value is now 13. And I want to point out something here. The value of elevation B, it doesn't show any value. Okay, the Autotext variable value with a page count type of Autotext, if the page comes before the page that you're on, so on page 13, there's no such thing as page 12. I think it's a quirk in the program. If I go back, now I'm on page 12. I just moved the order of A, and you see there's a value for elevation B. It's 13. If I go to the cross-sectional detail page 16, I can't reference any of the elevation variables. Okay, that's elevation ID. Anyway, want to go back to our floor plan. Now that I have these Autotext variables, elevation ABCD, I can go back to the markers that I've placed. And what I want to do is I want to use the elevation A Autotext variable, and so I'm going to say A, this is whatever is appearing in the top of this, that's what appears in the title block symbol on the page that I'm referencing. I'm going to go to text, insert auto text, and I'm going to go to elevation A. Now when I click outside of that, there it is. I could also come in here and type in the caret symbol and elevation A. So this text, I could type that in. It's going to be the same result. Or you could use text and insert auto text. That's a helpful way to do it. Now I'll point out too, so I'm using these red symbols. The red symbols correspond directly with this type of elevation drawing. The blue symbols, you're referencing 11, that's a different type of drawing. It's not just showing one elevation, or one type. It's showing the whole group together. So I like distinguishing, the red tags correspond one-to-one with a particular type of elevation. The blue tag, it's showing something else. Okay, so in this case the blue tag is showing all of this all together. But once we go through the floor plans and we are referencing, so on sheet 12 we have an A in this symbol, and that's what we're referencing from the elevation tag on the floor plan. So here we are on the elevation drawing. Typically we're going to link that to the cross-sectional details. So we need to start by determining what are the details that need to be included by looking at the plans. And what we see is 4.3, that's going to have the majority of these details. Okay, so we have these details. What we can do here is Shift Windows S. We'll do a screen capture. I'm going to take this into Paint, paste, and then I'm going to go ahead and crop this. Okay, let's see if we have some additional, yeah we do. I should probably point out, you want to be careful about changing the scale that you're viewing this. You don't want to view some details in one scale and then other details in a different scale. I can't get them all on the same page this large, but if I make them much smaller, it's going to be difficult for me to preserve the detail I want to have as I try and copy them. So if I bring this over, paste, and then take these over here. Now crop this, file, save as, frame, section, details. I'm going to open up Sketchup. Now in Sketchup we have a couple of different templates. The template's more about the settings. The settings control do dimensions, display in millimeters or inches, what does it look like. It's these types of, basically controls or adjustments that can be made within SketchUp. The template allows us to pre-select what those settings are. So I'm going to go File, Import, and then navigate to the picture. I'm going to place it at the origin. When you click once, you select the anchor point, and then you can drag it to size it. Now I'm going to try and find a dimension in here or something that I know what the dimension of it is. And I think that I'm just going to take a guess and say they probably drew this storefront frame 4.5 inches deep. So that shows as 11 foot 6 7/8. So what I'm going to do is punch in a calculator. 4.5 inches divided by parentheses 11 feet times 12 inches plus 6.875. That gives me factor for scaling it. So I'm going to go to I'm going to click this icon to zoom and put the whole thing in my window. And then this is the scale tool. When I click that, I'm going to drag it from the corner. In the bottom right, it shows the scale is 0.56. I'm going to type in 0.03240324, and then let me zoom into the extent of this. And now you can see here that the area of the drawing, I think the frame, it should be 4.5 inches. That's what it is here. And you see the blue axis kind of coming at an angle. That's because we have a camera view perspective. So that would, this is a way of viewing the document, and it intends to simulate like a real life perspective. We want to have like a 2D kind of a perspective in making up these section details. So I'm just going to delete this dimension, and then I'm going to save this before I get too far along. We'll call it frame section details. Before I get started, I'm going to go to View, Face Style, and I'm going to choose X-Ray. That's going to give me some transparency as I draw this. So I basically just come in here. I'm going to trace what's here. In the bottom right hand side, it shows the dimensions. So it's 3/4 inch stucco. So I just drew this 5/8 of an inch wide. In this right hand entity information, whatever you select, that panel is going to give you the information about it. So this, I need to click it. I pressed M for move. I'm going to drag it this way. The red line indicates that I'm on that red axis. I'm going to type in 0.125. So now this should be 3/4 of an inch thick. And then looks like I have something comes up about that far, I'm going to highlight these, and then let's see if I can use the offset tool. Okay. I'm going to type the L for line tool. Okay, and then I can use the materials drop down. So here I have D&G Materials. Okay, I'm going to triple click on this, right click, make group. Now this is going to let me continue drawing, and it's not going to, whatever I draw next, it's not going to just get stuck together with this. This should be dense glass. The name of this color is dense glass. If we go back to our comments and symbol pages, we have this indicated as a color associated with dense glass. And triple click on that, make it a group. Now we can draw this piece of steel. We have a couple of components as well. I'm going to see Sketchup Components. types. We have a 6x6 steel. Register it to that. If you click on an edge, go down, you see the green axis line. If I press and hold the shift key, it's going to keep it locked onto that green axis. I can't go right or left, but I can use my cursor to pick a point that I want it to line up with. Then if I click on this, and let's see, in the entity information, this is a component. What I want to do is double click in here. I don't anticipate having more components than that, but that matches fairly well. And then I have a 2x6 metal stud. I'm going to use the flip tool, and it highlights this. I'm going to click on the green axis, catch the edge of this, double click, drag this over, I'm going to hold the shift key. I want it to line up with the steel that I just put in. And then we have sheetrock inside. Shift, click. Now I'm going to take this down 0.625. Draw another one here. And then I'll press E for erase. Amazingly, we don't have a sheetrock. Alright, there is in the patterns, there is a pretty nice pattern that we can use for sheetrock. I find the pattern density is a little light, such a narrow strip, so I like to make it a little bit more dense. Make this a group. Okay, that's pretty decent. It's most of what they have in their detail, but it really doesn't make it clear where is the water barrier. What we should expect is that if this is dense glass, then they're going to have something coating it. So I'm going to move this over slightly, and then I'm going to draw a rectangle in this area. It's 0.1 inches wide. 0.1. I'm going to erase this. I'm going to go back to my D&G Materials and find my water barrier indication color. So let's move that over a little bit, and then I want to bring this down an extra 0.1 inches. So we should definitely have a water barrier. It needs to be clearly indicated in the drawing where we expect that to be. And their detail doesn't do a good job of indicating it in the drawing. But 941 does tell us it's paper-backed wire mesh over Tyvek. There's no good way for the architect to indicate all of that in the scale drawing. It just isn't going to come out clearly in a scale drawing. So what we're doing is we're making a slightly thicker area, we're coloring it green, and that lets everybody know we expect the water barrier to be at that location. I think that's a sufficient amount of detail for this section, so what we can do, maybe an easy way, create a tag here. We'll call it picture. Okay, I gotta go here. I'll change it to the pictures layer. Now this is, this is SketchUp's version of a layering. So if I have pictures showing or not showing, right, it's a convenient way of keeping everything together. Now I can right click, make it a group, right click, zoom the selection. What I need to do is insert the frame system. In this case, we're using a TrueLight 3300 series. Okay, so this will be the head that we're going to use. I'm going to use the flip tool, and then I'm going to position this thing right at the edge of the water barrier. So if I here, I probably want this to coincide with the inside face of the frame. And then I'm going to left click, or I'm going to click and hold and drag to the left. That will highlight everything. Zoom selection. And then if I bring back the picture, I had it in the X-ray mode so that I could kind of see the underlying thing, like what I'm drawing on it. If I go back to X-ray, like you can see much better how what is drawn is lining up with what is in that picture, or the screen capture that we took. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the X-ray, I'm going to hide the picture, left click and zoom across all this, zoom selection. Now, scenes, I'm going to click the plus button. It's going to give you scene 1, scene 2. I'm going to rename this as H1 head. Same basic process repeats again. In this case, I think what we could do is bring this. If I click it and I press Control, it gives me a little plus icon. This is going away. This is a component. Now there are 5. You need to right click, make this unique. Now let's go back at our plan and see what we have noted. 13.74. Pre-finished rib metal panel liner, including all associated trim and hardware. It's a little bit vague. And then if we really zoom our way in here, it's hard to know what exactly this is, but it looks like they have a J channel type trim to capture this at the bottom, and it looks like they have some kind of an L shape that returns to underneath the storefront. 708, they're showing sealant and backer rod continuous sealant, right? So according to this design, the storefront is going to be caulked on both sides. That's costly and not necessary in terms of water management. They could easily, if this is an L-shaped piece, they could easily bring it into the storefront frame and totally, create a finished condition and totally eliminate the need for all of that extra work. So that's what we want to try to show them. We're going to go back to flat freestyle, turn off the X-ray. Going to go to my layers, turn off the picture layer, zoom that. Okay, goodness, this looks it's hurting my eyes. Material, patterns, right click, texture, position. That's a little easier for me. Scenes plus this will be H2 storefront net. H2 head. We don't want to forget about showing them how to eliminate the interior sealant joint. I'm going to locate head detail just so I have the perspective, and then I'm going to modify this metal trim that they otherwise should expect to have. All they have to do is furnish something that has maybe a 110 degree angle, and then it will fill up this whole gap. Change the angle in the metal a little bit, and you eliminate a ton of work. Now, I'm going to save this detail, the H2 head. I'm going to save it without the storefront profile. I'm going to come back to layout and insert the Sketchup file that I just created the details in. I'm going to go to Sketchup model. This is where I control the display type, so I can display it as vectors. Okay, vector really can only display lines and colors, not fill. Raster, it's the fastest in memory to load, and it can include all of your textures, but the lines can get a little fuzzy. Hybrid is sort of the best. It's a combination of vector and raster, but it is more compute intensive, so tends to make your system run slower. A good way to work in SketchUp is by having these images display as raster, and then when you publish the document, there's a setting you can convert the raster images, you can publish them as a hybrid type. Now, within this drawing, I can control the thickness of the lines. So I set them to 2 point, that's a lot. If I set them to a 0.1 point, they become quite small. I can pick whichever scenes that I saved in the SketchUp file. When we're adding scenes in SketchUp, what we're doing is basically creating perspective drawings that we can reference in layout. Now we want to have reasonable amount of pages in our document. So we're going to set the scale 1:4 perspective, and we'll drag and resize our window. There's not really a benefit for us to show this whole piece of steel. We can certainly condense it. We also don't need to show the full piece of glass. Now if I hold down Control and I click on this and hold it and then drag it and then release the click and then release Control, it'll copy the SketchUp window. Now I can manipulate these windows independently, so I'm going to pick H2 head. I resized the window earlier, and these were not saved quite exactly in the same way. I'm going to resize this. Now in the one detail in the H1, we included the 3300 series profile. In the H2 detail, we did not. And the reason for that is because in this video, I want to show two different approaches. Initially, as I was figuring out how to do the shop drawings, it made a lot of sense to me to include the complete full drawing detail, including the True Light frame section. That resulted in a whole bunch of different custom wall section plus glazing system type details. What we really want to do is accumulate reusable content, and if you have a glazing system included in the detail and now you're working on a different job with a different glazing system, you're probably going to be redrawing the whole wall section detail. So a better way that we need to adopt as a company, we need to start organizing content in a fashion that lends itself to being reusable. So we have these D&G scrapbooks, and I have one here for True Light. I'm going to click on Edit. That opens up the scrapbook file, and on the first page, if I go to Pages, we have the specifications. That's this stuff here. We can drag that into our specification page, but I'm going to create a new page here, and I'm going to include some details of the 3300 series glazing system. So I'll call it 3300, and then I'm going to go to File, Insert. I'm going to open this up. So this is going to include frame sections from the True Light 3300 series. We're going to look at the viewports, so we'll look at the head. And we have to save this on some kind of a scale, right? So let's pick a quarter scale, and then I'm going to have to make this window quite a bit smaller. Let me try that, and then I will switch it to a different section and then go back to my default head. Okay, so it's still a little large. Okay, and I'm changing the scene so that it recenters in the size of the window that I have here. Okay, now if I press Control, click, drag, release the click, release Control, it makes a copy. I'm going to choose the sill viewport. Now you notice the style of drawing here, it's totally different from the head to the sill. And in some of the more recent drawings, we have solidly colored profiles. So I'm going to open this with SketchUp. As I was, generating content and finally figured out how to make it reusable within SketchUp, I had already begun to color in the details and add, that sort of contrast into the drawings just to make the different elements represented in the details a little bit more distinguishable. What I ended up with is a file that we're opening now is TrueLight 3300 series, where we have a head. Let's go back and find our default head. Okay, so this is what we have right now in our SketchUp file. If in SketchUp Components, we have this. I'm going to flip this over. It's a little bit disappointing that we seem to have a, I would say, better representation of what the head profile is, our SketchUp Components, than we do in the TrueLight product file. I'm going to move this over, say, 5 inches, and then I'm just going to delete this entirely, and then I'll move this back over 5 inches. Let's go to our scenes. If I double click on the head, that's the section it's going to give me when we look at the head. Okay, and here we have a sill. And then I'll go to the scene. I'm going to double click on the sill. So that's what it's going to give me. I zoom in on this. Maybe that's a better way. So this is the button you click to refresh the scene. I'll update everything. Okay. We have an anchored jam. Click on this red rotate handle, and then I'll use my flip tool. You can see in this drawing the green plane. It's not just appearing as a line. Same with the red plane. If I change the camera to parallel projection, that's giving me the 2D perspective that I really want to be using. Okay, and then I'll move this over 5 inches. Now I can drag and select. I have to select the whole entire thing for it to be selected. I can also just right click, zoom selection, go to scenes, refresh this. So I'm going to update that. Okay, now mullion 1. Let's see what we have for mullion 1. But we gotta have it. Come on, mullion 1. Yeah, it's much nicer. Okay. Delete that. Right click, zoom selection, file, scene, refresh that. Seems like I probably should have just followed right through in the order that the components appear. Just put them in all fully new, like we have here. Right click, zoom selection, scenes. Let's see, we have the transom mullion, door transom mullion, left side, right side. Okay, I'm going to refresh this scene, and I'm going to make it this now. Okay, so I go ahead and save this, and then I'm going to close out of the SketchUp program. I'm going to come back into layout. Now, we just opened this Sketchup file, saved it. I'm going to click this button. It refreshes the Sketchup file's data into layout. Okay, and so you see this just changed within layout, right? We changed it in the Sketchup file, we saved it, and then we refreshed the data from the Sketchup file. So we're causing layout to go in, reread the file, and bring in that data. So here's our head, here's our sill. We definitely don't want to see this black line. Okay, so that's fairly decent. I like to line them up with each other, so I'll hover over this. I get this red rectangle. I'll line it up with the glass there. Drag it down. Okay, I'm going to press Shift Z. I'm going to go ahead and file save this. So we just changed the scrapbook file within layout. I'm going to right click, close this. Now we're back in our shop drawing, submittal drawing. We're on the detail page. We're in our scrapbooks. We're going to the True Light. We're going to select the 3300. Now we're going to click on the head and we'll place it in the drawing. Now we can left click and hold, drag it, right click, make group. Now these two things get moved around together. Whereas here we have a single SketchUp drawing that really can only be reused when the conditions are exactly identical. So if we make up wall sections and separately include the frame sections in our drawings, we would be on a better path toward efficiency and reusability. However, when you consider the variety in construction with different exterior finish material, water barrier types, structural elements, and interior finishing materials, the unique combinations of this stuff, it becomes so large that it's very difficult to organize and manage. I haven't been able to figure out a way of doing it yet, and I don't know if it's possible. Another aspect of this has to do with the placement of the glazing system. For example, if your dimension on the glazing system is 4.5 inches, or if it's 5 inches, the interior finish and the exterior finish, they may end up needing to be changed. So you're back to editing details. And that variation makes it a little bit more complicated to just store all of this stuff as scrapbooks of structure and exterior finish and interior finish. Maybe that's an efficient way to do it, but if we're storing it independently in scrapbooks and then we're assembling it in layout, there's no good way for us to edit those drawings like we could quite easily within SketchUp. And if we have a stucco condition, then it's a good opportunity for me to show you the difference between raster and hybrid. If we have a stucco condition that has a trim piece or doesn't have a trim piece, I mean, even within the details of a single component of the wall, there could be a lot of variety. So I'm really not sure yet what the most efficient way for maintaining all of this stuff is. That's enough about my problems. We'll get back to D&G drawing symbols, and we'll select our page or drawing label. I just click it, drag it in. I'm going to push the space bar to deselect it, and I have, starts out the number 1 and then the page number. Originally I included this specification group to distinguish between interior, exterior, storefront, stuff like that. It doesn't really add value, and I find it just gets in the way. It's just one more thing to update. It doesn't really help us keep things clear. Now, usually I'm ordering or numbering this from left to right, top to bottom. And I want to make sure that I don't overlap the title block. In this case, looks like this is way small relative on the page. I like to try to cut them off even with the top of the title block, and then we'll change the number from 1 to 2. There are auto text variables we could set. If I go to text, insert auto text, AA detail is going to automatically increment numbers. So as I change this, what I ought to do is just delete this one. Remove this. Now, as I move it, that AA detail, it's going to increment. I'm holding down the control key. Increment once again. We want to come up a little bit. I'm holding control to select them both. Now I'll go ahead and move them down. Holding control, release the click. When I drug the marker up to the top, I realize we included an artifact in the 3300 detail. I'm going to resize this. Do the same similar thing over here. But we could change these details to reflect, sill or what have you. Let's go to our SketchUp model. We have the default sill. So, it's interesting. I don't know if you noticed this, but so we pulled the head component from the TrueLight 3300 series scrapbook, and in the context of our drawing, really that's just a window, a scene from that SketchUp file, and it works the same as any other SketchUp file. You have access to all of the scenes that are in that SketchUp file. So in the scrapbooks, maybe we don't need to arrange every single different detail for each of the systems. We just need a means of including that SketchUp file in our layout document, and from there we can just select which scene we want to display. So we'll assume, for the purposes of this video, that this is a nice, good, complete section detail page that we now want to link back to the frame elevation drawings. So we'll go back to our pages, and let's go to frame A. This one's on the first floor. I'm going to go in my scrapbook to D&G drawing symbols. I'm going to choose a section marker. So what we want to reference with our new detail page, it's going to be detail number 1. Right. I don't want this to be the page number. I want this to be section at head. Could just say head. The title that we give it, but we want 1 on sheet 17 in A. So let's go to our text, customize auto text, and let's say, let's just create a whole new page count variable. I really think that this is the best practice. We'll call this new detail page. And then we'll set the page count from the cover to the new detail page. I'll close that. I'm going to double click here. Double click on the text box portion. Okay, so this auto text value, it's AA detail, so that's going to increment on this page. That's not what we want. I'm going to type the number 1, press enter. Now I'm going to go to text, insert auto text. I'm looking for new detail page. New detail page. There it is. Sometimes when you do this, you click outside of it, it draws it, and the 1 and the 17 don't line up in the way that they're supposed to. In that case, I'll open it, make sure there's no, new line after the text, and then I'll click off of it, and then at that point, it normally renders fairly nicely. I like to adjust these so that they don't overlap the other frame elements, and I also like to have the shaded portion overlapping the framing. Just because of the geometry of this, it's kind of tough, so I'm going to resize this whole thing, and I could try my best to drag it so it scales evenly. Never happens. I'm just going to see, I think about, I'm going to type in 0.66, so it should be 2/3 of the original size. I'll drag it down. Could use my arrows to position it more precisely. I'm going to go to text style. Let me see if I make this 8. Yeah, that's pretty small. Okay, so I'm going to leave it as 10-point font. And then I'll take this, I'll drag it down to the horizontal. I'll go back into my scrapbook. I'll choose a marker for the sill. I like to line things up. I want to try to keep the scale the same, so 0.6. I'm going to get into the text once again, change this to 10 point. We'll assume that this will correspond with detail number 3 on the new detail page. And that's the gist of how you go about including these cross-sectional references. And that really is enough to complete the shop drawings. What we're showing is 3 different cross-sectional perspectives of the 3D built thing. The first perspective drawing is a horizontal plane through the things that we're trying to represent. The second drawing is an elevation drawing, so a 90-degree perspective, and then finally we're looking at a cross-section through that. Now, as a general convention, I'm placing the marker on the right, it's looking to the left, and I could indicate a cross-section across each one of these head components. It just makes the drawing that much more busy, and every single one of these is the same. If one of them were different, for example at the door transom, then I would show that as its own separate section. If I have all the same, these 3 vertical mullions, if they're identical, I'm going to use a single marker on the rightmost one. If the Middle one needs steel reinforcement. If it's different than this in any way, it's going to get its own marker. I'm going to include section markers around the door and door frame. Once I finish including all of the section markers and relating them back to the pages that those details appear on, then I should have the total number of pages in the submittal document, and at that point I'll go back and update the drawing index to reflect the correct page numbers. After I update the drawing index, I go to export it to a PDF. I'm going to navigate to the folder I want to save it in, and then I'll choose the name, the project name, glazing submittal. If it's the second version, then I'll put R1, like revision 1. Normally I don't include an R postfix in the original draft. I'll go ahead and save that. Then it asks me what page range I want to export. I'm going to export the entire document. Okay, and it asks about JPEG compression. I go with the default middle of the road setting. I don't want the file to be too large, and I find the middle of the road setting has been adequate. And I'll like to load it into the PDF viewer because I regularly catch issues with the drawings when I look at them in a PDF format that I just don't see. I think you get somewhat blind working in layout. So looking at the same content in the PDF, it definitely is beneficial in terms of finding problems. And now you'll definitely want to look this over before you do any of the next things with it. After I look it over in the PDF and go back to layout and correct a couple of errors and then look at it in the PDF again and go back to layout and fix more errors, after I complete that cycle, I want to go into Bid Unity, into the project page in the document section. I'm going to upload the file. The only document type that references submission type drawings is the administration approved product submission. I'm going to name this draft shop drawings, and then I'll choose the file. So just a quick note about the naming conventions. See my Palm Bay glazing submittal, so that'll be the draft. And I've already uploaded that. If the drawings are initially rejected or require revision, then the subsequent drawing that would be uploaded, I'll postfix it R1. When I receive back the comments on the initial set, a lot of times I'll upload that as, something to the effect draft shop drawings reviewed - revise or resubmit. Or if it comes back as approved with no changes, then I'll upload it as approved shop drawings. And I keep on using the phrase shop drawings and submission drawings interchangeably. We really should try to only refer to our shop drawings as shop drawings when they include the dimensions of the thing that we intend to build exactly. It's created some confusion on some of our other projects. We should refer to the drawings as submission drawings when they're only relating the planned dimensions, not necessarily the intended fabrication dimensions. And of course, the next step is to send it.